It happened without warning. No press release, no warning bells. Just one sentence that froze the council chamber in silence. "You have no authority here." Witnesses say Princess Anne didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. In a single moment, decades of royal protocol were shattered. Camilla stood still. The room went cold, and history quietly shifted. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The council chamber had always carried the weight of centuries. Generations of monarchs had shaped the destiny of a nation within those walls, their decisions echoing far beyond the palace gates. Around the long oak table sat senior advisors, guardians of tradition and silent architects of royal continuity. Their faces were composed, but the atmosphere was anything but calm. Something had been building long before that door opened. There had been murmurs in corridors, carefully worded memoranda, subtle disagreements disguised as polite debate. By the time Camilla stepped into the room, the tension was already humming beneath the surface. She moved with assurance, carrying the quiet authority that had steadily grown around her in recent years. Her presence signaled influence, and influence within the monarchy is never accidental. The matter at hand was no trivial discussion. It concerned constitutional sensitivities, the kind of deliberations that determine not just appearances, but power itself. Camilla leaned forward, prepared to assert direction, to shape the tone of what would follow. For a fraction of a moment, it appeared she expected agreement. Instead, she encountered stillness. Princess Anne had been seated in silence, observing, calculating. Unlike others, she did not shift in discomfort. She did not whisper to an aide. She simply watched, and then, with deliberate calm, she rose. No rush, no theatrical gesture. The movement alone commanded the room. Anne has always understood something fundamental about authority. It does not shout. It does not plead. It stands. When she spoke, the words were precise, stripped of ornament or apology. "You have no authority here." The sentence did not echo because it didn't need to. Its weight settled immediately. It was not a personal attack. It was a boundary drawn in unmistakable terms. Advisors who moments before had been poised to weigh in now lowered their eyes or nodded faintly, as if an unspoken consensus had just been confirmed. Camilla's composure flickered not dramatically, but enough to signal the gravity of what had occurred. What followed was not chaos, but something more devastating. Order, aides exchanged glances. Protocol was consulted in hushed tones. And then, with quiet finality, Camilla was asked to leave the chamber. No raised voices, no public spectacle, just the unmistakable understanding that the line had been crossed and corrected. As the doors closed behind her, it felt less like an exit and more like a recalibration. Power had shifted not loudly, but decisively. Those who witnessed it would later say that nothing about Princess Anne's intervention felt impulsive. This was not emotion overruling judgment. It was preparation meeting opportunity. The Princess Royal had chosen her moment with care, and in doing so, she signaled that there are forces within the monarchy that do not bend, no matter how titles evolve. But moments like this don't erupt out of nowhere. They are the final spark of a fire that has been burning quietly for years. Long before crowns were adjusted and titles redefined, there were tensions, subtle glances, quiet exclusions, carefully worded statements. Princess Anne has always been the monarchy's steel spine. Camilla's ascent into the inner circle was never universally embraced. Behind palace smiles and balcony waves, an invisible contest was unfolding, one rooted not in jealousy, but in legitimacy. To understand the confrontation that stunned the council chamber, you have to rewind the story to its quieter chapters. Princess Anne was not shaped by scandal or surprise. She was shaped by discipline. From the beginning, she embodied continuity, the unspoken contract between crown and country. Duty was not a role she performed. It was the language she spoke. While others learned to navigate headlines, Anne learned to navigate responsibility. Every handshake, every speech, every private briefing reinforced her identity as the monarchy's anchor, predictable, steady, unyielding. Camilla's journey was different, not weaker, but different. Her path into the heart of the monarchy was carved through controversy, resilience, and gradual acceptance. Where Anne had inherited trust, Camilla had to earn it, step by careful step. After her marriage to the king, her influence did not arrive overnight. It expanded quietly, committee by committee, patronage by patronage, conversation by conversation. With each passing year, her proximity to the center of decision-making grew. And with proximity comes perception. Some saw evolution, others saw intrusion. Others saw intrusion. Public appearances hinted at something beneath the surface. No words exchanged, no open disputes, yet the smallest gestures spoke volumes. The measured distance between them at engagements, the subtle shift in who addressed advisors first, the deliberate control of tone during joint appearances. Royal watchers speculated, but speculation only scratched the surface. Inside palace walls, the conversation was far more consequential. There were whispers that Princess Anne had begun questioning structural adjustments within the institution. Advisory roles were expanding. Informal influence was hardening into something more official, and Anne, fiercely protective of precedent, reportedly challenged whether these changes aligned with constitutional tradition, not emotionally, not impulsively, but methodically. She understood that monarchy survives on clarity of authority. Blur the lines and the structure trembles. Within the council itself, debates intensified. Who holds advisory weight? Who speaks with inherited authority? And who speaks with marital proximity? These were not personal grievances. They were institutional fault lines. Advisors found themselves navigating a delicate balance, aware that even the smallest endorsement could signal allegiance. Camilla's growing confidence within strategic discussions did not go unnoticed, nor did Anne's increasing vigilance. This was never about rivalry in the tabloid sense. It was about definition. The monarchy stood at a crossroads between tradition and modernization. The world expected adaptability, relevance, transformation. Yet the institution itself relies on centuries-old frameworks that resist rapid change. Camilla represented evolution, a softer reshaping of influence. Anne represented continuity, the firm reminder that survival depends on boundaries. And somewhere in that widening gap, the tension crystallized. What began as subtle differences in philosophy slowly evolved into a question of authority. Who sets the tone when decisions affect the very foundation of royal governance? Who safeguards the line between ceremonial presence and constitutional power? The answers were not theoretical. They were imminent, because when two visions for the future occupy the same chamber, conflict is not a matter of if, but when. And as power structures shifted behind closed doors, the council room became the battleground no one saw coming. This was supposed to be routine. A confidential strategy session. No cameras, no press, just senior royals and constitutional advisors discussing the monarchy's next chapter. But something changed the atmosphere before the meeting even began. An unexpected document, a revised proposal, and a decision that would test the boundaries of royal authority. The agenda, H, had been circulated days earlier, framed as a discussion on ceremonial restructuring, a modern refinement meant to streamline public duties and clarify advisory channels. On paper, it looked procedural, harmless even. Yet those familiar with palace dynamics understood that restructuring is never just administrative. It redraws lines, it elevates some voices and quiets others. And this proposal carried implications far beyond page margins. Camilla arrived prepared. Over the years, she had grown increasingly confident within strategic conversations, no longer content to observe from the periphery. Her expanded visibility had been gradual, deliberate, and until now, largely uncontested. But this document signaled something more definitive. It outlined an enhanced advisory role for the Queen Consort in matters traditionally reserved for bloodline authority, not ceremonial support, strategic influence, the kind that shapes direction before decisions are ever publicly announced. As copies were distributed, a shift rippled through the room. Advisors who had anticipated routine amendments now found themselves studying language that felt unusually assertive. Clauses were highlighted, terminology was carefully chosen. It wasn't aggressive, but it was bold. Too bold, some would later suggest. Camilla began to outline the rationale, speaking with composed conviction. She framed it as evolution, as necessary adaptation, as a reflection of her growing responsibilities. And for a moment it seemed as though the room might accept that framing. Princess Anne did not interrupt. She read, Slowly, methodically, her silence grew heavier with each passing explanation. She had spent a lifetime safeguarding the monarchy's constitutional equilibrium. She understood that advisory power is not ornamental, it is foundational. And what lay before her was not simply modernization. It was real. Catium. The king's absence from the meeting only intensified the strain. His chair remained symbolically empty, a reminder that this debate was unfolding without the one person who could definitively settle it. That vacuum created uncertainty, and uncertainty inside a monarchy is combustible. Advisors began offering cautious observations, their words measured, their tones diplomatic. Yet beneath the civility, discomfort was unmistakable. Questions emerged about precedent, about legal interpretation, about the delicate distinction between ceremonial partnership and constitutional authority. The discussion tightened. What began as polite clarification slowly edged toward confrontation. Camilla defended the proposal as an organic extension of her role. Anne countered with references to established boundaries, not emotionally, not theatrically, but firmly. She invoked tradition not as nostalgia, but as structural necessity. The monarchy, she argued, survives because its lines of authority are unmistakable. Blur them, and the institution risks undermining itself. The temperature in the room shifted from debate to reckoning. Advisors stopped offering suggestions and began listening instead. It was no longer about phrasing, it was about principle. Camilla held her ground, but the resistance she faced was not personal animosity. It was institutional resistance, the kind that emerges when centuries of precedent feel threatened. And then came the silence, the kind that settles when everyone realizes the next words will alter the trajectory of the conversation, perhaps even the institution. Anne closed the document, lifted her gaze, and in that suspended moment, history seemed to lean forward. And when Anne stood, she wasn't just defending tradition, she was defending something far older than any crown. 7 words, that's all it took. Not screamed, not whispered, delivered. With surgical precision. Those inside the room described the air becoming heavy, like history itself was holding its breath. Camilla reportedly attempted to respond, but the room had already chosen its side. You, a direct address, not your majesty, not a title softened by ceremony, just a word that stripped the moment down to its raw core. Have, present tense, immediate, undeniable, no, the pivot, the fracture, the word that split expectation from reality. Authority, the most dangerous word in any monarchy. Power defined, power denied. Here, not everywhere, not forever. But in this room, in this decision, in this sacred space of governance, Princess Anne's voice did not tremble, it did not rise, it did not seek approval. It carried the calm certainty of someone who had already weighed the consequences and accepted them. There was no anger in her tone, only resolve, and that made it more devastating. Emotion can be dismissed, resolve cannot. In that measured delivery, Anne wasn't reacting, she was asserting, drawing a line so clear that even those who disagreed would struggle to blur it. Around the table, subtle movements told their own story. A senior advisor shifted forward, then stilled. Another lowered his gaze as if acknowledging an inevitable truth. No one rushed to defend, no one interrupted. The silence that followed was not confusion. It was alignment, a quiet recognition that something foundational had just been clarified. Authority, in that moment, had been publicly defined and limited. Camilla held her composure. That, perhaps, was the most striking detail. There was no visible outburst, no dramatic rebuttal. Instead, there was a pause, a recalibration behind steady eyes. She began to speak, a measured attempt to frame the proposal differently, to suggest misinterpretation rather than overreach. But the energy in the room had shifted irreversibly. The argument no longer had momentum. The room had absorbed Anne's words and settled into their gravity. Protocol moved in quietly, not as punishment, but as procedure. A senior aide approached, voice low, posture respectful. The message was unmistakable. This discussion would continue without her presence. It was not a spectacle. It was a correction. Camilla rose with dignity, but the symbolism was inescapable. To be asked to leave the council chamber during constitutional deliberation is not a minor adjustment. It is a statement, As she exited, those remaining felt the weight of what had occurred. This was not merely about a proposal, it was about hierarchy, about who safeguards the invisible architecture of monarchy. The closing of the door did not echo loudly, but its meaning reverberated. In that quiet finality, a reset had occurred. Lines were no longer implied, they were enforced. And perhaps most striking of all was the understanding that this had not been spontaneous. Anne's intervention bore the mark of forethought. She had allowed the proposal to unfold, allowed the room to feel its implications, before stepping in. Timing is power, and she had chosen hers with precision. But the confrontation inside that chamber was only the beginning. The real tremor came after. Within minutes, word began to spread, not to the press, but through corridors lined with secrets. Phones buzzed. Advisors convened in hushed clusters. The monarchy has survived wars, abdications and scandals, but an internal power fracture of this magnitude, that's different. This wasn't tabloid drama, this was structural. The first instinct was containment. Private secretaries moved quickly, not in panic, but with sharpened urgency. Messages were drafted, then redrafted, not for publication, but for internal alignment. Who knew what? Who had witnessed the exchange? Who might speak out of turn? In institutions built on discretion, information travels fast but never freely. And this was the kind of information that could destabilize more than reputations. Senior royals were reportedly informed within the hour, not through dramatic confrontation, but through measured briefings. The summary was simple and devastating. A boundary had been enforced in the council chamber. Authority had been publicly clarified. And the Queen consort had been asked to leave. Each word carried implications far beyond the moment itself. This was not about embarrassment. It was about precedent. Legal advisors began passing the constitutional weight of what had occurred. Did Anne overstep? Or had she reinforced a line that should never have blurred? The debate was not emotional. It was strategic. If the monarchy's internal hierarchy could fracture so visibly, what did that mean for future governance? Could advisory expansion continue, or had it just been permanently halted? Beneath the surface, competing interpretations formed like fault lines beneath polished marble. The king's reaction, described by insiders as measured but grave, added another layer of tension. He did not erupt. He did not dismiss the event. Instead, he requested clarification, details, context. That restraint spoke volumes. It suggested recognition of the stakes. Loyalty to a spouse weighed against preservation of institutional order. Personal bonds strained against public duty. In monarchies, those conflicts are rarely visible, but they are always present. Within hours, subtle factions began to crystallize, not openly, not declaratively, but through alignment in conversation. Some advisors quietly affirmed Anne's defense of tradition. Others believed Camilla's modernization efforts were necessary evolution. No one declared allegiance, yet everyone felt the pull. It was a silent sorting process, and it carried long-term consequences. Staff morale shifted. Those who prided themselves on stability now sensed fragility. When authority is questioned at the highest level, uncertainty trickles downward. Palace employees wondered what this meant for their own roles, their own proximity to power. If hierarchy could be recalibrated so swiftly, nothing felt entirely fixed. Rumors of emergency consultations surfaced almost immediately. Discussions about reaffirming advisory protocols, clarifying ceremonial distinctions, even revisiting internal governance charters, none of it confirmed, all of it plausible. The palace remained outwardly composed, issuing routine statements about engagements and charitable initiatives. Publicly, nothing had changed, but inside, everything felt different. Conversations grew guarded, decisions took longer, words were chosen with surgical care. The monarchy has endured countless external threats, yet this tension was internal, intimate, and therefore more volatile. A house divided does not collapse overnight, it shifts subtly, quietly, until one day the cracks become visible. And while the palace maintained its composed facade, the public was about to sense something was wrong. No statement, no denial, no smiling balcony appearance to reassure the nation, just silence. And sometimes in the monarchy, silence speaks louder than confession. Royal watchers noticed subtle changes, seating arrangements, delayed appearances, the absence of shared engagements. The press did what it always does when confronted with silence. It listened harder. Royal correspondents began dissecting schedules, comparing timelines, studying who appeared where and with whom. There were no explosive headlines at first, only carefully worded columns hinting at internal recalibration and strategic adjustments. But beneath the restrained language, speculation was accelerating. Something had shifted, and those who observed the monarchy for a living could feel it. Television panels debated nuance. Why had Camilla withdrawn from certain advisory briefings she once attended? Why did Princess Anne suddenly appear more prominent in discussions tied to governance? Invitations were passed, guest lists scrutinized. Even the smallest deviation from routine became evidence in a growing theory. The balance of influence had been publicly corrected behind closed doors. The public, too, began to sense it. Social media lit up with slowed-down clips and amplified gestures. A glance interpreted as tension, a pause stretched into meaning. When Camilla appeared at public engagements, her composure remained intact, but there was an undeniable recalculation in her tone, measured, careful, almost restrained. Meanwhile, Anne's presence seemed sharpened, not louder, not theatrical, just firmer. She spoke with the confidence of someone whose authority had been recently reaffirmed. Palace communications remained impeccably neutral. Statements focused on charity work, diplomatic visits, cultural initiatives, no acknowledgement of friction, no clarification of internal roles. It was strategic ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying the rumors swirling just beyond the gates. Yet that neutrality only intensified the conversation. In monarchies, transparency is rare, but when silence lingers too long, it becomes its own message. Within media circles, the debate evolved. This was no longer framed as personality tension. It became a discussion about constitutional boundaries. Commentators began asking the question that had once been unthinkable: what defines authority within the modern monarchy? Is influence earned through lineage, marriage, experience, or proximity? The incident in the council room, though unconfirmed publicly, now shaped interpretation of every subsequent appearance. For Camilla, the contrast was stark. Her rise had been marked by resilience, a steady rebuilding of public trust. Now that ascent appeared to stall, not through scandal, but through structural resistance. For Anne, whose reputation rested on steadfast duty, the moment reinforced her image as guardian of the institution's core. Success and setback stood side by side, intertwined in a narrative neither woman could fully control. And as weeks passed, the narrative shifted from rumor to reckoning. Analysts no longer asked whether something had happened, they asked what it meant. The monarchy thrives on continuity. Yet this episode suggested an internal negotiation of power still very much in motion. The silence, once strategic, began to feel like suspense, a pause before a larger clarification. Because beneath the optics and headlines lies a deeper question: who truly holds power in the modern monarchy? The monarchy may wear crowns and tiaras, but real power flows through precedent, lineage and legitimacy. Titles can be granted, influence can be earned, but authority, that's different. When Princess Anne spoke those 7 words, she wasn't just correcting Camilla, she was drawing a constitutional line in sand that may never be erased. To understand why those words carried such force, you have to look beyond personality and into structure. Ceremonial roles are visible. They are photographed, applauded, and celebrated. Constitutional authority is quieter. It operates in briefings, in signatures, in who speaks first and who does not speak at all. One can be symbolic, the other shapes outcomes. The difference between them is not decorative, it is foundational. Princess Anne has lived her entire life in proximity to state function, not merely as a public figure, but as a participant in the machinery of governance. She has sat in rooms where policy brushes against tradition, where diplomacy meets discretion. Over decades, she internalized the architecture of royal authority, where it begins, where it ends, and who guards its boundaries. That experience cannot be inherited through marriage. It is absorbed through immersion. Camilla's influence, by contrast, has evolved through persistence. She moved from peripheral figure to central presence, navigating skepticism and public scrutiny with resilience. Her growth in stature reflected both personal endurance and strategic alignment with the king's vision. Over time, her advisory input expanded. Her voice carried further, but expansion, in monarchies, always raises the same question. At what point does influence begin to resemble authority? Historically, advisors within the palace have aligned themselves with bloodline continuity, not out of favoritism, but out of structural instinct. Lineage, in constitutional monarchies, is not merely symbolic, it is stabilizing. It reassures the nation that governance flows through a clear and unbroken line. When roles blur, even subtly, that clarity dims, and the institution fears nothing more than ambiguity in its chain of command. The incident in the council chamber exposed that fear. It was not just a disagreement about paperwork, it was a test of perception. If the Queen Consort appeared to exercise constitutional authority without explicit mandate, critics could frame it as overreach. Overreach breeds doubt. Doubt erodes legitimacy. Anne understood that instinctively. Her intervention was less about personal correction and more about institutional preservation. Modernization complicates everything. The monarchy cannot survive by resisting change entirely. It must adapt to public expectation, media scrutiny, and shifting political landscapes. Camilla represents that. Adaptation, a recalibration of partnership within the crown. Yet modernization carries risk. Push too far, and tradition recoils. Move too cautiously, and relevance fades. The balance is delicate, almost invisible. And in that invisible tension, authority becomes fiercely guarded. The king now stands at the center of this storm. His loyalty to his wife is undeniable, so is his duty to safeguard constitutional order. The two are not always aligned. Every monarch eventually faces moments where personal allegiance collides with institutional responsibility. This may be one of them. How he navigates it will define not only internal relationships, but public confidence in his reign. Because this is no longer about a single confrontation. It is about precedent. Once a line has been drawn publicly, even within private walls, it reshapes future interactions. Advisors will remember it, protocol officers will cite it, and those who aspire to influence will measure themselves against it. Authority, once clarified so starkly, does not easily return to ambiguity. There are whispers already about recalibrated roles, revised charters, subtle shifts in advisory frameworks. Nothing announced, everything observed. The monarchy moves slowly, but when it moves, it does so with permanence in mind. Princess Anne's words may echo far longer than anyone expected. And now, with that line drawn, the monarchy faces a future more uncertain than ever. History will not record the echo of that door closing. But those who heard it say they felt something change. Power recalibrated. Alliances reassessed, as somewhere inside the palace walls, the realization settled in the old guard is not ready to yield. In the weeks that followed, conversations turned from reaction to restructuring. Quiet discussions emerged about clarifying the scope of the council's authority, tightening definitions that had once been left intentionally flexible. Draft frameworks were rumored to be circulating among senior advisors, not to diminish anyone publicly, but to ensure that no similar ambiguity could surface again. The monarchy has always survived by adjusting its internal mechanics, long before the public notices, and this time would be no different. For Camilla, the moment marked not defeat, but recalibration. Those who underestimated her resilience had not been paying attention. She did not retreat into silence or resentment. Instead, she adjusted her approach. Engagements became more strategically aligned with ceremonial strength rather than constitutional proximity. Her influence, though less overt in governance conversations, did not disappear. It transformed. In royal life, survival often depends not on confrontation, but on repositioning. Princess Anne, however, emerged from the episode with her institutional standing unmistakably fortified. The confrontation had reinforced what many inside the palace already believed. When the architecture of authority is threatened, she will intervene, not emotionally, not recklessly, but decisively. Her role as guardian of precedent was no longer implied, it was demonstrated. And demonstration carries weight far beyond reputation. At the center stands the king, navigating a path few would envy. He must preserve unity, while acknowledging that unity does not mean uniformity. Loyalty to his wife must coexist with responsibility to the crown. Every decision he makes from this point forward will be examined through the lens of that council room moment. Does he reinforce the line Andrew, or does he gradually soften it? His choices will determine whether this fracture heals quietly or deepens over time. Public trust now hangs in a delicate balance. The monarchy's strength has always relied on the perception of cohesion, a seamless blend. Always. Tradition and stability. Yet modern audiences are perceptive. They sense tension even when it is never confirmed. If internal divisions become visible, confidence wavers. And in a world already skeptical of inherited power, even subtle instability can fuel larger doubts. There is also the possibility that this confrontation marks the beginning of a longer realignment. Institutions rarely shift all at once. They adjust in increments through policy tweaks and unspoken agreements. But once a boundary has been publicly enforced within private chambers, its memory lingers. Advisors will think twice before expanding roles. Future proposals will be measured against that defining sentence. 7 words have altered the rhythm of internal governance. Yet the monarchy possesses something formidable, a survival instinct honed over centuries. It has endured abdications, scandals, global upheavals. It knows how to adapt without collapsing. That instinct is now fully activated. The question is not whether it will survive, it almost certainly will. The question is what shape it will take as it moves forward. Because moments like this do more than resolve disputes. They define eras. They draw invisible lines that historians later point to as turning points. And though no official statement may ever reference what occurred behind those closed doors, its impact will ripple quietly through future reigns. Because in the House of Windsor, power is never truly given, it is defended, and sometimes it is taken back in 7 unforgettable words. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.